Hello guys, welcome to my channel. So as you have already seen the title, we are going to work on a simple bank application which is going to be based on Spring Boot, Thymeleaf and RESTful services and PostgreSQL database. So let me show you the functionality what we are going to build in this application first. So the application is going to look like this when you hit localhost 8080. So this is completely empty, there is nothing. So when you click on this add new account button, you will see a pop-up. So let's provide a name, John Doe, and balance as 1000. When you click on add account, you will see that the account has been created. If you click on this view transactions options, for now you will see nothing here because we haven't did any transaction yet. So let's deposit. So provide the amount, let's say 100, confirm deposit, and now you see 100 has been added to the amount. Now if you see the transactions, you can see that on this date and time we got the type as deposit and the amount. All right, now let's try to withdraw. So let's do the same amount, 100, confirm withdraw, and the balance is 1000, and let's refresh this. You can see that there has been a withdrawal also. So this is a very basic banking application, and this is just the start. I'm going to make more videos on this application. So for this part of the application, I'm going to work on this logic. All right, so I hope everything is clear. Now before we actually move on to the code, if you are new to my channel, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do. I need a lot of subscribers, and I see that a lot of people are watching videos but not subscribing. So please subscribe to my channel. So first thing first is that you need to go to Spring Initializer so that we can create a new project. So here the language is Java. We are going to work on Maven. That's good. And let's give a name. So here let's do simple bank app. That's it. All right. So packaging is jar, version is 17. It's good enough. Now let's add dependencies. So first foremost is going to be Spring Web. Then you need DevTools so that I can do live reload, and then you need PostgreSQL driver. What else? You need Thymeleaf support. Then lastly we need JPA, and we are done. Now let's just generate, and so now we have this zip file with us. You just need to extract it and import it to your favorite IDE. So I'm going to use Eclipse for now. Alright, so now let's import existing Maven projects. Browse, downloads, simple bank app, and select folder. And now the Maven imports are happening, so it will take some time. I think it's done. So this is our application. And here if you see, these are your packages by default given to us. Let me expand this a bit. All right, now the very first thing to do is that we need a database, so let's work on that also. So let's open pgadmin4. all right, so it's opened. Expand servers. So here in the database, click on create database, and then you provide the name. So I'm going to do bank app, simple bank app, and we are done. Now the tables we are going to create using JPA, so that is not needed. So let's do application.properties changes now. So in pom.xml, I hope I have added PostgreSQL driver. Okay, so it's added, that's good. So what do we need? Basically we need data source configuration here. So we need URL, we need driver class name, we need username and password, right? So these are the basic configuration that we need. So let's start with the data source URL. So spring.datasource.url. so here we are using JDBC, and the type of the database is going to be PostgreSQL, and then where it is hosted, so it's in my local host. The default port is 5432, and then the database name, so it's going to be simple bank app. All right, Now we need the driver class name. So the purpose here is to tell Spring Boot the class name of the JDBC driver it should use to connect to PostgreSQL. Alright, so data source dot driver class name and org dot PostgreSQL dot driver. Alrighty, now we need username and password. So spring dot data source. So when you install PostgreSQL, you provide the username and password. You can change it anytime. So I'm going to use my default configuration, which is PostgreSQL as user. Sorry, this is not password. Username and then the password. So the password for me is password. Now to update the database schema automatically every time you run your Spring Boot application, we need to set another property, which is your Spring JPA property. So spring.jpa dot hibernate. So hibernate is by default ORM for JPA. You can always change it. DDL auto, and this I'm going to set as update. So this will make Hibernate check the entire entity mappings that we have provided, and it will apply any necessary changes to the database schema based on the entity definitions. Alright, now there is one more optional thing that we can do is spring.jpa dot show SQL equals to true. So see, if we have a lot of mappings in between our entity classes, sometimes things get complicated. So in case you want to see the query which Hibernate or JPA is trying to execute, then you can try to print them out in the console so that you can debug it to see if some mappings are not actually what they had to be. So you can debug easily with that. Alright, so this is optional. You can choose to not use it. That's okay. Alright, so now we are done with application or properties. Now let's work on our repositories first. So for that, what do we need? We need to create an interface. So we need a package as well. So let's say repo, and here let's say bank repo. Now here let's say extends JPA repository. So let's talk about what JPA repository is basically. So this is a very big thing. So this JPA repository is basically your CRUD operations plus additional things. So right now we are going to use CRUD operations mostly, but here if you see, it also has paging and sorting and then query by example. Now we have a lot of methods here. If you see, we have save all and flush. Similarly, we have delete all batch, delete all by ID. So a lot of methods. So if we take a look here, so we have find all, which we are going to use. We are going to use get by ID, and we are going to use methods from your CRUD repository. So if you take a look here, you have additional methods as well. So here you have find all by ID also. Right, so we have a lot of things that we want. So that is what I want to use, so that I don't have to create any new method that is coming to me by default. Now this JPA repository needs two arguments. First is an object, then the type, primary key type of that object. So the object that I'm going to use is going to be account, which is going to be your entity as well, and the primary key is going to be ID. And the ID type is going to be long. Alright, now let's create account class for now. So this is going to be in package entity. Alright, now let's save this and we are done. Now let's talk about account class. So this class is going to be an entity. That is the first thing. Now what do we need here? So this is basically your table, right? So whatever you need in a table, you need to define here. So I need columns basically. So the first column is going to be private long ID. and this is a primary key, so that's why I'm going to annotate this with ID. Then I want it to be automatically generated so that I don't have to increment the value every time I add a new row to the table. So that's why I'm going to use generated value, and then I need to provide the strategy. So that is going to be generation type dot identity. Alright, now what else do I need? I need holder name, so let's say holder name only. Then I need balance. Alright, now this account is going to be mapped with another entity, which is going to be transaction. So an account can have a list of transactions, right? So transactions, let's import list and let's create class transaction. Alright, let's do new array list. Now as I said, an account can have a list of transactions, so I need to annotate this with a mapping of one to many type, because one account can have many transactions, right? So this is going to be a one to many mapping. Now I need mapped by attribute. So this mapped by attribute basically specifies that the account entity is the inverse side of the relationship, and the actual ownership of the relationship is in the transaction entity. So here mapped by points to the property name, which is going to be account in the transaction entity, which I will create later, that represents the foreign key or association to the account. Now I need cascade as well. So this cascade property defines the cascading behavior of operations such as persist, merge, remove, refresh, and detach. So here I'm going to use cascade type.all, which means that any operation like save or delete performed on the account entity will be cascaded to its transaction entities as well. Just for an example, if an account is deleted, all its associated transaction entities will also be deleted. Now let's add one more property, which is orphan removal equals to true. Now this orphan removal, this setting ensures that any orphaned transaction entities, those removed from the transactions list but not associated with any other account, will be automatically removed from the database. In other words, if a transaction is removed from the transactions list of an account without being associated with a different account, it will also be deleted from the database. Now let's create constructors. So first is your no argument constructor. Now we need getters and setters, so let's generate that. Oops. Alright, so we are done with account. Now let's come to transaction. So again, this is an entity. Here also we need the primary key as ID, so I'll just copy this. Now what do I need more here? I need the transaction type, then I need the transaction amount, and lastly I need date time, so local date time. Now what did we do before? We used one to many mapping. Here we will define many to one mapping. So account many to one. Now here we are going to use a property which is fetch. So fetch equals to fetch type dot lazy. So fetch basically specifies the fetching strategy for this relationship. When we use lazy, which tells Hibernate to load the account entity on demand. So on demand means that the account associated with a transaction will not be fetched from the database until it is explicitly accessed in the code. So what benefit do we get here? So here the performance is improved by avoiding unnecessary database queries. This is particularly useful in cases where you have a large number of transaction records, but you don't always need to load their associated account details. Right now I need join column annotation as well here. So join column, and here the name is going to be. So now this specifies the foreign key column in the transaction table that links it to the account table. So this is what we were talking here. Now the name here specifies that the foreign key column in the transaction table is called account ID. So this column in the transaction table will store the primary key of the associated account, thus establishing the relationship in the database. Now let's create a no argument constructor first, and then the setters and getters. Alrighty, all done. Now let's come back to bank repo. So here we don't need to do anything. Now we are done with repo, we are done with entities. Now let's work on a service layer. So let's create another package as well as a class. So let's create a class directly. So new class, and here let's say service, and here we will say bank service. So this is a service, so let's annotate this with service. Now here what do I need? I need the instance of bank repo, and let's auto wire this as well. Now what method do we need? So we need methods like method to create a new account, then we need method to retrieve all accounts, then we need method to deposit to an account. Similarly, we would need method to withdraw from an account, and then we need method to get transactions history. Alright, so this much we want. Now for deposit and withdraw we need to play around. Actually for these three we need to play around transaction, and for these two we need to play around account. So for transactions we need another repository which is going to be a transaction repo. So let's create that as well, and let's rename this bank repo to account repo. Account repo, as this is specifically for account, so that's why I said this is specifically for account, because if you see here we are only playing around account here. So let's copy this, paste it, transaction repo, and instead of account let's say transaction. Now we need a method here, so let me write them first and then we will talk about it. So these are the arguments that we need here. Now let's do a query here. Alright, now comes the explanation part. So this is a custom query first of all, and this is for the optional filters. So here we have used the query annotation, which allows you to define a custom JPQL, which is your Java persistence query language. So this query is for more complex criteria than the standard find by methods provide. So we usually get find by method, but we don't get the custom query. So that's why we are using this. Now the query that we have used here, I hope that this is much simple than actually it is looking. So here this query fetches transaction entities where the account ID matches with the account ID, the type matches with type, and start date matches with this condition start date, and then the end date matches with this one, right? Now why do we see these OR condition here? So this is saying that if the type parameter is null, this condition is ignored. Otherwise it checks if the transaction type matches the specified type. Similarly we have for the rest of the two conditions. Now what is the purpose? So the purpose here is that it will allow the type, start date, end date filters to be optional. Only non-null parameters will be applied as filters in the query. Alright, so param is pretty straightforward, that this is a parameter and we have 4 parameters here: account ID, type, start date, end date. Alright, now let's come back to bank service. So let's start with the very first method. Okay, first thing first, we need another instance here, transaction repo. Let's auto-wire this as well. Now here we will say public account create account, and here what do we need as argument? We need holder name and we need double initial balance, or we can make it work with the account object as well. Alright, so here I will create the new account first. New account, and let's create a constructor so that we can make it work easily. So let's create constructor using field, and here I need holder name and balance. Generate. Alright, so we have the constructor with us and we have a lot of spaces. Alright, okay, so we have the account object with us. Then we just need to return account repo dot save, and here we will provide new account, and we are done. Now talking about get all accounts, this is very simple. So public list account get all accounts. Here we will simply return account repo dot find all. That's it. Now for deposit, basically we need we don't need to return anything, so let's keep it void. Method name is going to be deposit. Here we again need two things. First is the account ID to figure out on which account do we need to deposit and what amount do we need to deposit. So here first thing that we would do is to figure out if there is an account with this ID or not. So here let's say account repo dot find by ID, and here we will provide account ID. Now if we don't have this ID, in that case we will throw an exception. So let's throw an runtime exception, or let's throw new illegal argument exception. Invalid account ID. Then we need to set few properties here, like the amount, so balance, and here let's do account. So the amount that we are receiving here is what we need to add to the existing one. So first is you need to find what amount the account already contain, and then you need to append the new amount to it, right? So account dot get balance and then append the amount. All right, now we need to save this. So count repo dot save account. Now we have made a transaction here, so for this we need to add a new transaction as well. So transaction equals to new transaction. Here also let's create a constructor. So what do we need here? We need account, amount, type, date, 4 things, right? So transaction generate constructor using field. Let's remove ID, type, amount, date, account. All right, generate, and we are done. So the type here is going to be deposit, because we are making a deposit. Amount is going to be amount, and what is this third thing? Date. Okay, so date is going to be now, so local date time dot now, and then the account object. So that is good. Alright, now we have the transaction object. Let's save this using transaction repository dot save transaction, and we're done. Now similarly we will need withdraw method. So let me copy this because most of the logic is going to be same. So instead of deposit, this is going to be withdraw, and set balance, this is going to be minus. All right, and yeah, this is good. Also, one thing that we will check additionally is for negative balance. So if let's say account dot get balance is less than amount, in that case we will not subtract. In that case we will throw an exception, illegal argument exception, and here we will say insufficient balance. Alright, now in the transaction this will be withdraw and everything will remain same. Now the last method, which is going to be to return list of transaction. Get transaction history. So here we will get all the parameters like account ID, string, type, local date time, start date, then local date time and date. And here we will just return from the transaction repo the query that we have used there, that will be used here also. So find by account ID and optional filters. Alright, good enough. Now we are done with our bank service. So the main logic is this bank service. So we are done with this. Now we just need controller code and your Thymeleaf pages. Okay, so now let's create controller class. So for this I need a package as well. So controller bank controller. So let me close everything up, and first thing first, to annotate this with controller annotation, so that Spring can recognize this as a controller, so that will be easier to find. Now I need an instance of bank service. Let's auto-wire this. Now we need few mappings, so we need mapping to display list of all accounts. We need mapping to add a new account. Then we need mapping to deposit to an account. Then withdraw from an account. Lastly, we need view transactions history. Alright, so these mappings we need. So let's start with the first one. So this is going to return a Thymeleaf page, and the name is view all accounts. Here we need a model because we need to return the data. So this model acts as a mediator to pass along the data from controller to view. So this is a MVC framework, right? So M stands for model, V stands for view, C stands for controller. Alright, so we have this MVC framework now. So we have this model with us now. So what do we need to send? As this is going to display all the accounts that we have in the database, we need to fetch the data from the database. So how do we fetch it? We have already used JPA. So this is going to fetch all the accounts like this, fetch it into a list. So let's say accounts list, and let's initialize this variable. Now we need to return this to the view using model. So how do we do that? So model dot add attribute. I think I imported the wrong model here. So it's going to be from Spring, and now I should be able to see the methods. Add attribute, and here first thing is going to be the name through which I can fetch the data in the UI. So let's name it account list, and then account list. Alright, now I need to return the page. So the page is not yet created, but it will be created. So let's say view all accounts, or let's say accounts. Alright, now add a new account. Okay, so the mapping here is going to be get, because this is to get the data. So here what we are going to have, we are going to have this. Alright, now to create account, I need to again redirect. So once the account has been created, I want to redirect to this mapping. So that's why I need to return string. Alright, so here we need some parameters. So the first parameter is going to be your holder name. In which name do you want to create the account, and the balance, initial balance. Now I need an annotation here, request param. Now if you're wondering why do we have request param here, so let me explain that. So the request param annotation in Spring Boot is used to extract query parameters from the URL, which we are going to provide here. So this actually binds the query parameters from the URL to the method parameters that we have here. That is why we use request param. So when we actually hit this post mapping, whatever data we get while we actually hit this request, that data is going to be holder name and initial balance. I hope this is clear. So let's say accounts/add. Now here we don't need to fetch this into a variable. We can directly call this and we should be good. Now we have to return the redirect command, so redirect and then the get mapping. So this is it. So this is what we have here, right? So all good here. Now talking about deposit, again this is going to be a post mapping because we want to make changes to the database, right? Now here again we need some arguments. So first is going to which account, in which account are you depositing, and then the amount that you want to deposit. So this is not going to be request param, this is going to be path variable. So this we will fetch from the URL itself. So we will talk about path variable more. Let's finish this first. And in the post mapping you will have the URL like /id, whatever ID of an account. So this is going to be the ID of an account, and then deposit. Now talking about path variable annotation, this again used to bind a method parameter to a specific part of the URI. It allows you to extract values directly from this the URI segment, making it ideal for RESTful endpoints that rely on identifiers in the URL. Now if you're wondering what is the difference between the path variable annotation and request param annotation, so they both used to extract values from the URL in a web request. However, there is a big difference. So the purpose here for path variable is to extract values from the URI, not URL, and here we extract the value from the path, right? But for request param we extract values from the URL query parameters. So when we hit this mapping, whatever we are actually providing, that is what we are going to fetch here. So if you see in URL we have something like this, query equals to ABCD, so something like this URL we are hitting. In that case it comes under request param. Alright, so I hope this part is clear. Now for deposit, again we don't need to save it into a variable, we just have to hit this method and we are good. Now again we need to return to the same mapping, which is your view all accounts, so redirect to that and we are good. Now talking about deposit, it is going to be almost similar to what we have in deposit. So withdraw is similar, so let's change few things here. Now here we are going to have account ID and amount, but here the amount is going to be in your request param. So let's change that. Also one thing I want to highlight here, so there is a name that you can provide along with the annotation. So this is because if let's say the variable that you are hitting through your Thymeleaf page, then if the name is something like amounts there, in that case you have to fetch it like this, then it is going to link this amounts to this amount. But if the name is same like this, in that case you don't have to use it, it's optional, right? So remember that. So this is a good habit. If you want to keep it, then yeah, it's going to be much beneficial thing for you. Otherwise it's okay, right? So I'm just going to do it like this because here in my case it is ID, not account ID, so I don't want to have an error here. So that's why I'm fixing all things. Now we are done with withdraw. Now the last thing is your transaction history. So this is going to be a big one because here we are going to fetch a lot of parameters, the arguments in the method, so that we are again going to get through your path variable and request param. So view transactions, and here what do we need? Let's start with ID first. So long account ID, then you need type of account, then local date time, start date, and then local date time, end date. Alright, so this is going to be path variable and rest are going to be your request param. So the reason why we have mix and match of these two is because in the Thymeleaf page we have submitted the form in a way that it will come under request param, and the information which we don't see in the model, or in the not in the model but in the pop-up box, that comes under path variable. So the information that you see is request param, which you don't see is path variable. Alright, now let's copy this and paste it everywhere. Okay, lastly we need model as well, because we are going to send this information back to the Thymeleaf page. So first thing first is to fetch the transaction history from the database. So we have a method here, get transaction history for a particular account. And this we need to fetch into a list. So let's name the list transactions. And this is going to be a variable, so like this. Now, like I said, we need to send it back, so add attribute, and the first attribute is going to be your transactions, and second we are going to pass the account ID. This we need so that we can see for which account this is happening, right? So account ID, and lastly we are going to return the page on which we are displaying this information. So return transactions. So now we need two pages, basically accounts and transactions. So we are done with our controller, so let's work on our Thymeleaf pages. So let's start with accounts first, because this is where we are going to land. So go to your resources, inside templates, create a new other, and let's see if we have HTML. No, let's create a simple file, and here let's say accounts.html. Alright, so we need HTML5 here, so doc type HTML and then HTML. Alright, now if you're wondering why we have this here, so this is a namespace declaration that enables the use of Thymeleaf attributes in the HTML document. So we are going to use a lot of attributes here, so that's why. Now we need a header here, so let's do that. So here we are going to use Bootstrap, so that's why I have used the CDN for it. Now the title is accounts, that's okay. Now we need body here. Alright, so what do we need? First thing first, we need a heading. So all accounts. Alright, now the view is going to be like that. We need a button, so here somewhere along here we will have a button, add new account. And I don't like Eclipse in this way because I'm not able to write HTML easily, so I'm going to use another editor for this. Alright, so we need a button here, and then we need a table where we are going to display the list of accounts, right? So let's start with button first. So here we are using Bootstrap, so with Bootstrap we get a lot of customization. So I'm going to use a button, and then the color is going to be blue, that's why button primary. Then I need some spacing, MB3, and when we click on this button I want to open a pop-up, so we call that model. So let's do that using data toggle. Now I need to provide the target for this model, as in which model to open. So data target is going to be like this. Here we provide the ID. So I'll later on create this model with this name, and the button name is going to be add new account. Alright, now we need a table basically to display the existing accounts information. So this is going to be with the class table, and for formatting MT3. Now this needs a header, so t-head, and inside that you will have a tr, which is your table row. Inside that you will have table headings. So the first heading is going to be ID, and let me copy this. So we are going to have four header columns. So this is going to be holder name, then the balance, and lastly actions. So actions are to withdraw or deposit. So for each row we will have two buttons to withdraw or deposit. Alright, now this is all your t head. Then we need t body. So t body is your main logic. So here we are going to use again tr. So now we are going to work with Thymeleaf. How? Because for each row I want to fetch the data from the database. So whatever data we have, I want to iterate over it and then display it in each row. That's why I am going to use th each here, which is to iterate one by one through the account list. So account, and here I will provide the name which I have passed. So let me go back to bank controller. So here if you take a look, this is what I have passed, right? So this is what I'm going to use here, account list. Now with account I will have a lot of parameters basically. So this account is basically your account class. So if you take a look here, this is what we are holding as information inside your account object. So I can fetch every piece of information from here. So the first thing is going to be th text. So this is what you display, that is where you put it in th text. And here what do I want to fetch first is going to be your account ID. And let me copy this. Then I need holder name, and then balance, and lastly I would have transactions. So transactions as in if you want to view the transaction, if you want to deposit, or if you want to withdraw. So three basic buttons, right? So that is going to be again inside definition, so td. So this is going to be inside same definition. Now first one is going to be your hyperlink, so thref, and the name is going to be view transactions. Now the class here is going to be type button. So info is a neutral color. Now in the link we know that which URI we are going to hit, right? So if you remember correctly, let me go to bank controller. This is what we are going to hit. Okay, I didn't put anything here. So this is going to be a get mapping. So ID and then transactions. So how do we hit it? We use it like this, and then we will provide it like this, ID and then slash transactions. Now if you remember here we have request param, so which is your type, start date, end date. So for now what I will do is I'll keep this feature on hold and I'll provide this feature to the later videos. So right now I'll just do required equals to false, which means that I'm not going to use it for now. Now here in transactions we are not going to provide the request param arguments. These are optional, so we are not going to, so you can ignore this. So now you can think that we have only path variable here and nothing else. So how do we provide the path variable? So we provide it like this. Here we will say id equals to then dollar then account dot id. So we are in the iteration, so we have account.id, and if you remember here we are using id here, which is what you are passing. Alright, now we are done with one button. Then you need another button. So this is to deposit. Here I want few customization, like this is going to be in green color, so that's why button success. And then when you click on this, I want to open a toggle. So toggle as in model. Then the data target is going to be with id deposit model. Then data id, so this I want to pass along. So when we hit this pop-up, I want to keep this information inside the model for future references, so account.id. Alright, similarly we will have the withdraw button as well. Alright, so it looks fine. This has to be withdraw, and here we will change the model id to withdraw model, and let's change the color as well, so keep it yellow. Alright, so we are done with this table. Now like I said, we are going to work with your models. Now let's keep this all information inside a container just to enclose and have some spacing basically. Alright, so we are done with first part. Now let's add the model. Now let's give a class here, so it's going to be model. So this is of Bootstrap. You can take a look at the documentation, and I'll also show a little demonstration of how you can use the Bootstrap documentation to use the features basically. Now we have to use the same ID which we have defined or used here. So this is what we are going to use for the model. So this is my first pop-up basically. Now we are going to use tab index equals to -1. So this attribute attribute prevents the model from being focusable or accessible via keyboard. So I don't want anyone to use keyboard navigation, like you can press tab, right? So I want to prevent this until it is explicitly shown. So this is essential for accessibility, to make sure that the model is not part of the page tabbing order until it is open. Now the role is dialog, that we already know because we are going to create a pop-up here. Now area labeled by equals to deposit model label, and lastly area hidden equals to true. Now talking about area labeled by, so this attribute associates the model with the label element that has the ID deposit model label. So this will allow screen readers to identify the title of the model. So typically you would add a title element within the model with this ID to provide context. Now area hidden equals to true, so this attribute hides the model from screen readers when it is closed. So when the model is shown, this attribute is dynamically changed to false to make it accessible to assistive technologies. Now let's create another div here. So this is your actual model dialog, and here the role is going to be document. Now this is going to be a form because I'm going to submit few details here, so that's why I need a form. And this is the main logic through which you are going back to the controller. So the form ID is going to be deposit form. Action is going to be nothing for now. Method equals to post. Now I'm going to keep an input field hidden, which is for your account ID. This information I don't want to show to the user, but I'm going to use it. So the ID is going to be deposit account ID. So this ID is not going to be used by the Java code, rather the JavaScript code. So if you want to use this input field to make something visible or something hidden, in that case you can use JavaScript to make that customization over your HTML page. Right now, what I was doing, so account equals to name equals to account ID. So this is how it will map the account ID data that we are passing from our controller. So we are passing account ID, right? So this is what we are going to get inside this input field. Now we will separate this model basically into three things: header, body, and footer. So let's do that quickly. So class equals to model content, and inside this we will have header, body, and footer. So model header, let me copy this. So this is going to be body, and this one footer. Now inside model, inside header, basically you will have a heading with the title basically. So the class is going to be model title, ID equals to, so this is just for JavaScript again, model label, and deposit. So this is your title. Now I would need a button here. So this button is to close the pop-up box. So type equals to button. Actually we don't need type equals to button. Class equals to close, data dismiss equals to model, that's a must, and then area label equals to close. Alright, now inside this I want to display an icon, so I would use span here for that. So area hidden equals to true, and the icon that I want to display is asterisk, or you can use X, that would make sense, or you could use an icon. Alright, so We are done with this, and now come down to body. So here we need a div with form group. So here we are going to use some input box basically. So for Bootstrap it would look good if you enclose it within form group. So I would need a label first. The name is going to be holder name, and here holder name. Now the input, so type is going to be text, class equals to form control, then ID equals holder name, and lastly name. So this name is going to be the main attribute through which we are mapping the object or the variable which we are passing to the model, and that object is going to link with this name. So these names should match. This ID is for JavaScript, this is for Java. Now I need another, so let me copy this. So instead of holder name, this is going to be your initial balance. This is going to get changed, so let me copy this. Alright, now to make this a mandatory field, so without this you won't be able to succeed, or click on submit. So this makes the field mandatory. Now in footer, what do you need? You need a submit button or add account button basically. So this is going to be of type submit. With this button we are going to go back to the controller. Class is going to be button, and this color is going to be blue, so that's why button primary. Add account, and let me copy this. So this is going to be just button. Instead of primary, let's do secondary here, and this is going to dismiss the model. So data dismiss model, and here we will say close, and we are done with one of the model. This is your model, add account model. Similarly, we will have withdraw and deposit models. So this is the same pattern that we are going to use, but now let's take a look at the Bootstrap documentation, so you can use this code like I have basically. So let's do that. So when you go to the Bootstrap, you will see a newer version maybe, but you will see an official page like this, or you can click on this docs. You will be directed to this page. So here if you see, you have a sample here, and similarly here if you see, you will see a lot of sections that you can scroll over. So I'll just quickly glance over it. So what did we use here? We used form control, right? So this is a form control. This outer lining that you see here, this is a form control basically, and inside that you use label. This is your input field, and this is your text area. So if you take a look here, so you have a label, you have input field. Similarly, you have another one. So let's say if you don't see anything here, right? So what you can do, so here in this code, if I take a look, that I don't see anything related to model, right? So you just search over it and hit enter. So here if you see, you got directly to your model page, and here if you scroll down, you will see a lot of things which we have used here. So if you see the pattern here, so we have model content, inside we have header, then body, then footer. So This is very similar to it. So this is very similar to what we have used. Similarly, if you want to search anything, any class, now let's see this. If you want to search a particular class, you can also do that. So just hit button secondary, hit enter, and you are not on the right page. So let's do that again. Alright, so if you scroll down a bit, you will see a lot of relative searches. So here I see button group, drop down forms, and there you go, you have buttons here. So click on this and you see button primary. So this button primary is blue, then similarly you have different colors, right? So let's scroll up. So button secondary is this color, success is this, similarly you have everything. So that's how you use it basically. Alright, so enough talking, let's come back to our code. Now we have to create withdraw and deposit. So let's start with deposit. So this is your div tag. So I'll copy paste this, but I'll modify things. So this is your deposit model, and here the ID is going to change to deposit model, and this is okay. This is going to be a document, that's good. Deposit form, deposit account ID. Here we need a close button, that's good. Now coming back to body, here I want to deposit, so I don't need holder name, rather I need amount. So let's say deposit amount, and let me copy this, put it here, and here I would say amount, because this is what I have passed through a controller. Now here I don't need a second group, so I'll remove this. Now here in the button submit, I would say confirm deposit, and then this is closed. This is good. Now let me copy this again, and this is what we are going to do for withdraw as well. So only thing that we will change is ID name. So withdraw model, and this is not going to be a deposit form, this is going to be your withdraw, and similarly this. So withdraw form, this is going to be withdraw account ID. What else? This is going to be withdraw, and let me copy this, paste it here. Now talking about this, we will say amount, but here I would say confirm withdraw. Alrighty, now we need some JavaScript code, as I was saying before, so let me just quickly write it down and then I'll explain line by line. Alrighty, so this is what we need to use. Now let's talk about stuff. So we needed to use jQuery for bootstraps, so that's why we have used CDN for jQuery as well as bootstrap. Now talking about this script code, so here what are we doing? So the very first line which you see here is to listen for the show.bs.model, this one. When the browser is on this, then this function will get triggered. So this listens for the event show.bs.model on both deposit as well as withdraw. So this is a common function. Now this show.bs.model is a bootstrap event that fires just before the model is displayed. So this allows the code to set up the model's content or form action just before it's shown, right? So if we want to make some changes to it, we can. This is possible. So if you see here, we are setting some changes. So that's that. Now talking about this button, basically, so here what are we doing is this captures the button element that was clicked to open the model. So this button is passed as event.related target. So the button variable holds the jQuery wrapped element, allowing us to access any data attributes it may have, right? So here I'm just getting all the things. When we click on the button, whatever we submitted, I'm going to fetch it. Now if you take a look here, through button we are fetching ID, and through button we are fetching whether it has success class or it has and other things. So let's look at this. So this retrieves the data ID attribute from the button, and this attribute holds the account ID for the transaction and is set on the button element. So that is what we are fetching here. So this here we are creating a form action. So here if you take a look, the action is empty, we don't have anything. So when we hit submit, so in the controller, which mapping are we going towards? So this is what need to provide in the action. That is usual stuff, right? But we are doing it dynamically. So we got the account ID, so we created the entire URL through account ID, so we appended it. But here if you see, the URL is wrong, so we don't have bank anywhere, so this we need to change. So we only need account ID and then deposit, or okay, so this is going to withdraw, and then similarly transactions. So I can remove this. Okay, I need like this. Similarly, I have to remove it from here. So this is a conditional argument, right? So if the button has class button success, in that case go to this URL, otherwise go to this URL. Alright, I hope this is clear. It's simple, elegant. Now talking about these two lines, what are we doing here? So this first line actually finds an input field in the model with the name account ID. So this is basically hidden, and this sets its value to the retrieved account ID, ensuring that the account ID is available as a form input within the model. So when you submit the form, you need this detail, right? So that's why we are setting this. Now here we are setting the form action which we have created here. So this we have set it here. I hope this part is clear. So this is what we needed to do in our accounts.html. So let's quickly copy this and come back to Eclipse and paste everything here, and we are good. Now we also need another Thymeleaf page, which is your transactions page. So quickly create that. So I'll use a shortcut, so I'll copy this accounts.html page, paste it here, and here I would say transactions.html. Now here I don't need much, so let me modify this here only. So what I can do is simply I can remove these models first. Now I also don't need these scripts code, so I can remove this. So let's start one by one. So the title is going to be transactions history. Now here in the heading, what do we need? We would say same thing, transactions history. Now I need a horizontal line here as a breakup, so this is that. I don't need this button here. I need table, that's for sure. So I want to create a table like table striped and table bordered. So I hope this makes sense. This is just for striping and this is just for bordering. That's it. Here I don't need 4. I only need 3 headings. So the first is going to be on which date the transaction happened. So this is a local date time. Then the type of the account and the amount. Sorry, not the type of the account, but whether it was a credit or a debit. So deposit or withdraw, that type. Now here, what are we passing? So let me go back to controller. So we are passing transaction this. So transactions, here let's say transaction, and again here we only need 3, so I'll remove this one. So transaction dot date dot type and dot amount. Alright, so here we will say date, type, amount, and I think I need to make this change in accounts.html as well. No, I don't. Now what else are we missing here? So one more thing that we need is go back to accounts. So this is going to be your hyperlink. So what is the URL for that? So the mapping is this: classes button primary, and then close it, back to accounts, and we are done with our transaction page as well. So transactions.html, voila. Alright, so we are done with everything that we needed to do in this video. Now let's run this application and let's see if everything is working fine. Alright, so now let's run our application. Let's see if everything is working fine or not. Okay, so we got the error, and let's see what we get. Here is, okay, so we got a lot of error. Okay, so unable to obtain isolated JDBC connection, password authentication failed. Okay, alright. Okay, so the issue is very basic. So we have to use Postgres here instead of PostgreSQL. Alright, now let's save this and run the application again. Alright, so everything is fine now. If you see here, the application is started, and let's go above, and here we can see that we got tables created, account, transaction, both of them. We got the constraint as well. So let's go to the database and let's verify if we have everything as expected or not. Alright, so I'm in Simple Bank app. I'll just refresh this and go to schemas, public, tables, and I see account and transaction here. And this is what we basically created through these two classes, right? Now let's verify the columns according to what we have in these two classes. So in account we have columns ID, balance, and holder name. So okay, so this is account, and here we have ID, holder name, and balance. And then in your second table you have columns ID, account, amount, date, type, account ID. So ID, type, account, date, and account ID. So we have everything here, right? So we are good to test our application. Now let's hit our browser, hit our application, and check the functionality. So localhost 8080, and we got the home page. It's completely empty, which is good. Now click on add new account. We got the pop-up. Let's provide name. Let's do Shriram 1000, add account, and we got the exception. So it says post is not supported, and it should. So let's check in the controller. So we have accounts add here, and it's going to hash instead of the mapping. So this is what we have wrong. So the page that we are using here in the browser is accounts.html. so when we click on add account model, we go to this, and this is the action. And in the JavaScript we handled this. So okay, so we are handling this only on withdraw and deposit, not on add account. Okay, so I missed this because we have handled only these two, so we have to make changes. So first of all, let me minimize this. So the labeled by is wrong, so this should be add account model label. So this should be same as this. Extra thing is label. All right. Now in the hash we have to remove this, and what we need to do is, so let me remove this entire thing. We don't need ID here because we are not going to handle this through JavaScript. So th action, and where do we want to go? We want to go to accounts add. So copy this and paste it. So this also we need to change. So let me update this, and instead of deposit it should be add new account. There are a lot of typos here. I'm really sorry for this. Alright, so saved it. Now let's test it. So go back to the home page, click on add new account, provide the name and the balance, click on add account, and we got the account created. Now if we click on view transactions, okay, so we are getting error here. Okay, that we will sort later. Let's try deposit and withdraw. So let's deposit 100 rupees, confirm deposit, and we got the error. Required path variable amount is wrong. Required URI template variable amount for method parameter type double is not present. Okay, let's fix this. So the error specifically talks about the URI template variable amount. So this is what happens when you go to the controller. So if I go to the controller, we are at this mapping, and here we have path variable amount. Okay, so this is the problem. So this should not be path variable, rather request para. All right, let's save this. Also, one thing that I want to test is to query whether we have the information in the table or not. So select star from account. So we do have an account. Okay, now let's come back to the home page, click deposit 100, confirm deposit, and we got the amount here. Now let's try withdraw 100 again, confirm withdraw, and in the withdraw it actually added instead of subtracting. So the logic is not right. So in the withdraw we are using this method deposit, and here it should be negative. So I think this happened, this happened because we copied the, okay, here we do have negative, but the issue is that in withdraw we are calling the deposit method. All right, so withdraw and save. So when you do copy paste, remember to check if anything needs to be corrected. So we have 1200 here. Let's withdraw 100 again. So let's do 200 now. Confirm withdraw, and we got 1000. Now this transactions page is not working because in the query that we have provided, we are getting invalid data access resource usage exception. So it's a big one, right? But it's very simple if you try to understand is that this query is not actually working. That's why we are getting the error. Why this is not working? Because it says could not determine data type of parameter number 4. So let's try to debug this.
A few moments later.
Alright, so the issue is fixed. What did I change basically is I changed this query a bit, so you won't be able to see the null check here and here. So the dates were problematic ones because PostgreSQL is doing a hard null check, and when I made this project I used H2, and H2 is really easy and it doesn't do a lot of checking, because of which I was able to make it work with this query. Now I'm using PostgreSQL where it is failing, so I had to make some changes. Like I made changes here, but as I said, there are null checks, so because of which what I'm doing, when I'm actually hitting this method get transactions history, before that, if start date is null, which is going to be, because when we put required as false, then the values are going to be null, right? So we are not dependent on the UI. Even if someone provide the data, even then it is going to be null. So that is the functionality of required as false. So these are not required. Now when the start date is null, I'm providing a default start date, and same is for end date, with which I'm able to make my code work. So if you see here, let me refresh this and let me go to transactions. So you don't see that error anymore, and right now I'm getting error for a typo basically. So let me fix that quickly. So here it says that it is not able to find date from the array list that I provided. So here we have transaction, here we have transaction, so it should be transaction, not transactions. So that was a typo, and if I refresh, I would be able to see the transactions. So everything is working fine. Let me try to create another one. Let's see. So let's say John Doe, add account, and this is created. Now deposit 100, withdraw 200, so it's 900 now. Now view transactions, so we have it here. So everything is working fine, and this is what I wanted to do in this video. I will make more video in continuation with this project, so stay tuned for that. I'll provide the code link in the description of this video, so if you want to copy, you can copy from there. And this is it for today. If you like this video, don't forget to like the video, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. That is what I need. So I hope that I will meet you in some another video. Till then, stay happy, keep learning, and bye bye.